Good evening and welcome back to 18 Live and Well on this hot and muggy July Thursday. This is your host, John Harrison, and as usual, I'm joined by my co-host, the always entertaining Chandler McKinney. Chan, how are you doing today?
Doing well, guys. Thanks for being here again.
We got a great show for you here today. We're really excited to get going, and so let's get started. The first thing that we want to start off with is the most prominent news coming out of NBA free agency is Carmelo Anthony heading to the Rockets. He's been linked there ever since he waived his no trade clause for the Cavs and the Rockets, and the Cavs haven't really made much headway in trying to get him. So it seems to be that he's heading to Houston. The only problem is the Knicks don't really want any of the players that the Houston Rockets have. The only player that the Rockets would probably be willing to move that comes to the close salary that Melo has is Ryan Anderson. And the Knicks really only want players who are 25 and under to have building blocks for the future. The Rockets don't really have any of those types of players. And Ryan Anderson probably is the only player that they'd be willing to move. His contract, he has 3 years left at $61 million. So the salary just about works out. Melo has a lot left on his contract too. So with the Rockets already about $15 million over the salary cap, you sort of have to figure out a way to make the salaries match for the trade to be able to go through. So Ryan Anderson is the most likely candidate to be on the move from Houston. But again, the Knicks don't really want that type of player. He's older. I think he's about 28. He's not really a building block for the future, and he costs a whole lot. So that's not the type of player that the Knicks are really looking for. So in order to get a deal like this done, you have to find a team that would probably take Ryan Anderson's contract, and a team that has that type of cap space to be able to take that player. I mean, you look at the Brooklyn Nets; they have a lot of cap space, and you would even think maybe the Timberwolves aren't even done yet making moves. You add Jeff Teague, you bring in Jimmy Butler. You don't have that much elite three-point shooting, and Ryan Anderson is a pretty good three-point shooter, right around 40% from the power forward spot. So that'd be an upgrade over Gorgui Dieng. He's a player that might go to the Knicks. But again, he's about 27 years old, so he doesn't necessarily fit under that 25 and under mold. But you think the Timberwolves, maybe the Suns, and definitely the Brooklyn Nets with the cap space that they have, they'd be able to get a deal done. They're talking about 4 teams would have to be involved in something like this. And I also don't think you can even roll out the Cavaliers yet. They've been pretty silent so far in free agency, with a few signings here and there of Jeff Green and some other players. But you still have to think that they might be in the mix, quietly working on a deal to somehow get Melo there, which would work out pretty well for the Cavs. I don't know if it beats the Golden State Warriors, but it's a step in the right direction. But if a trade does go through with the Houston Rockets, sending Melo from the Knicks to the Houston Rockets, it begs the question: does a team that has Chris Paul, James Harden, and Carmelo Anthony even work very well together? Just some statistics: James Harden had a usage rate of about 34% last year. That was 5th in the league. So I mean, he needs to have the ball in his hands a lot. Carmelo had a 29% usage rate. That's top 30 in the league. And Chris Paul had a usage rate of about 24%. So, I mean, you have 3 players that all have really high usage rates. They have to have the ball in their hand a lot in order to be effective. You think maybe James Harden and Chris Paul could figure out a way to make it work, but if you had a third player in the mix in Carmelo Anthony, who comes with his fair share of drama and history, you wonder if those 3 players would be able to coincide. What do you think, Chan?
Yeah, this is going to be a blockbuster deal if it goes down either way. The Knicks are trying to unload Melo for a couple years now. He hasn't really panned out from what his career has happened with New York. He hasn't really he might have made playoffs a couple times, but really hasn't got them far in the playoffs, if anything. And Carmelo is friends with LeBron and Chris Paul, so it could go either way on that side. But with the Rockets, if they were the more prominent team to get Melo here, I think Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, James Harden team could work. That you have a point guard, a shooting guard, and then a small forward is everything that the Rockets are looking for, and they're definitely being aggressive here, trying to add more players, add more depth that can finally beat this Golden State Warriors team. And they're really being gamblers here, and that just kind of compares to the Boston Celtics, who have been really a passive team, haven't really gotten after Paul George, aren't really going after Carmelo Anthony, aren't really going after any big names other than Gordon Hayward. So if this trade were to go down, this is going to be a huge move for the Cavs or Rockets, and this could really put them over the edge to finally beat Golden State.
See, I have to disagree there. I think if you bring Carmelo on board, in my eyes, you'd have to convince him to come off the bench. Because right now you have Chris Paul and James Harden in the backcourt. You have Trevor Ariza at small forward. If you don't move Ryan Anderson, he's starting at power forward. And then you have Clint Capella at the center. I think you could find, if you do end up trading Ryan Anderson, you can find a reasonable power forward to put in the starting lineup. And then if you bring Melo off the bench, he's still someone that could serve as a sixth man and probably give you still 20 points a night.
Carmelo is not going to come off the bench for either of these teams. He's a starter. He knows he wants to be a starter, and I don't think he'll leave the Knicks if he's going to be a backup on either the Rockets or the Cavs.
Yeah, but if you want to win, you got to make some sacrifices, and I think Chris Paul realized he has to make some sacrifices. He wasn't going to win in Los Angeles, so I think he's going to give it a shot with the Houston Rockets, and I think James Harden realized he's not going to win in Houston by himself either, so he's going to make some sacrifices too. So I think if I'm Carmelo Anthony and if I want to go to the Rockets, I got to be willing to make a sacrifice, and I don't think it's going to work unless he comes off the bench.
No, Carmelo's been a starter since he's come in the league. He's sacrificing coming to a new team. He's not going to sacrifice too much by becoming a backup and the sixth man in the league now. He's going to go to the Rockets or the Cavs probably and be a starter all the way. Teams want him bad enough that they'll make him a starter on their team and not put him behind Trevor Ariza or someone else that has been on the team for a while.
Yeah, but he's 33. He hasn't won a championship. He's coming from a pretty bad New York team. You're telling me you wouldn't make a sacrifice to come off the bench to win a championship?
I mean, in his case, he's a great player. He's an MVP pretty much, or not MVP, an all-star almost every year that he's in the league. He's just a physical specimen. He kind of compares to the LeBron, Paul George type of players, and he's one of the best guys in the league. So I don't think he'll sacrifice too much coming to either of these teams. And if he wants to start, I mean, this might be kind of the tail end of his career, but he's been a starter his whole career. So why now would he ever give that up?
Yeah, but the other thing is Chris Paul plays defense. James Harden doesn't play defense, and Carmelo Anthony definitely doesn't play defense. So if you put Carmelo Anthony in the lineup, you have James Harden, Carmelo Anthony, two premier players. Well, I guess you can't really say Carmelo's a premier player anymore. I mean, he's 33. I mean, he can still put up the points, but the defense definitely isn't there. So you have two players in your lineup who have absolutely no interest in playing defense. I don't think that's a pretty good recipe for winning.
Well, James Harden has stepped up his defense this past year. I think he realized that defense wins championships, and he's going to need that more if he wants to go farther in these playoffs. Chris Paul is always a pretty good point guard. He'll shut down some people, and Melo's just going to have to work on it. They're definitely an offensive team, and they want to shoot the ball, move quick, score 120, 130 points a game. But they definitely have to step it up on defense too if they want to work in this kind of high-powered Western Conference that's happening right now.
So if you have those three players in your starting lineup, who do you task to shut down the other team's best player? See, here's the question. You have two players who don't play defense. Chris Paul's like 6'1" with his basketball shoes on. When you play the Golden State Warriors in the conference finals, who's shutting down Kevin Durant? Who's shutting down Draymond Green?
Yeah, they don't have that physical defensive force like a Kawhi Leonard or anyone like that, but it's got to be a team effort, I guess. It's to beat Golden State in any series or game is almost a team effort more than just one player shutting down Steph Curry or Klay Thompson or KD, but maybe that's something they'll have to add in the mix too, is maybe get a Carmelo Anthony and then maybe find a defensive player that they can rely on to shut down someone, some of the greats that the Warriors have.
So who guards Kevin Durant?
Carmelo Anthony.
Ooh, I don't like that matchup. I really don't like that matchup.
I like athletic versus athletic. Put the two best guys together, same height, same weight. See what happens.
So who does James Harden guard?
He'll guard Iman Shumpert probably, and that's where I think, or not. He'll probably guard Klay Thompson in the West. And if they were to get to the finals, Iman Shumpert with the Cavs, and I think that could be an advantage for them. I think James Harden's a better scorer than Klay, and I think he could be a more kind of high-powered offensive player than Klay too.
I don't like that matchup. I think if he wants to win and if he wants to come to the Rockets, he's got to come off the bench. The other thing is that a lot of people might not remember that Carmelo Anthony played for Mike D'Antoni in New York before D'Antoni was fired and Mike Woodson took over. And if you remember, that tandem did not work out very well. So I think Carmelo Anthony would be coming to a new team coached by Mike D'Antoni, probably playing the exact same system that they ran in New York, a system that already doesn't emphasize defense. So, I mean, you're going to have to make some sacrifice if you want it to work. And I don't know if Melo's the player to make sacrifices. I certainly would like to see him do it and come off the bench, and I think they could be pretty good and compete with the Warriors if he does. But I think if you have a starting lineup that features Chris Paul, James Harden, Carmelo Anthony, you're not getting past 5 games with the Golden State Warriors. You got to add a defensive stopper, and you got to have Melo come off the bench. And in other news from Houston over the last week, James Harden signed the largest contract in NBA history, a 4-year extension at $228 million. I think that's something to be said for a player who hasn't won a championship yet. And I know Houston definitely wants to lock him down, and rightfully so. But hopefully you see in the next, I think he has 2 years remaining on his current contract, and then the 4 years will kick in. So, hopefully in the next 6 years that the Rockets can put something together and win a championship. What do you think about that contract?
Yeah, I mean, you're hearing talk from NFL players now that NBA players are getting stupid amount of money and they're getting paid like just crazy amounts of money. And it just shows that these players are sometimes the best in the world. And James Harden kind of, I think, proved that he's a probably top 5 player in the league. And he's one of the first players you think of. And he's brought a different presence to the league than other players have in the past. And he's got the look, he's got the game, and he puts up points to back it up. And he even made it to pretty far in the Western Conference. So I think the contract speaks for itself, and I think he'll continue to stay in Houston for a long time, and this is his team now.
He better stay in Houston, because, I mean, that's a pretty tough contract to move to another team if he starts to play poorly. And, rounding out the rest of the NBA news, a few days ago, Jamal Crawford decided to sign a 2-year, $8.9 million contract with the Timberwolves. He's 37 years old, so this is likely his last NBA contract. And if the Timberwolves, really aren't performing up to how they should be, competing for a playoff spot at the trade deadline, that's probably a player who's probably going to be looked to move to a contender, maybe the Cavs, or I hate to say it, the Golden State Warriors at the trade deadline. But that's something to keep an eye on. I think the Timberwolves are going to be pretty good this year. They got a good lineup, and I really think you got Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns coming to their own. So I think you're looking at a team that's going to be moving up the Western Conference standings. Back in the East, Avery Bradley is traded to the Detroit Pistons for Marcus Morris. That was a move that really had to happen to make some cap room for Gordon Hayward and his 4-year, $128 million max contract. Nobody really wanted Marcus Smart. Can't shoot threes. It's kind of an attitude. Has some behavioral issues in the past. That's a player that nobody really wanted to take on. And you want to keep Jay Crowder because he's the player when you play LeBron James that he's out there guarding LeBron James all the time. You don't want to throw Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown on LeBron James. It's not going to end well. Pistons get a good player in return. Averages about 18 points a game. Plays pretty stellar defense for a team that's looking to make the playoffs in the East. I think that's a pretty good get. You get rid of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They renounced his rights, and he signs with the Lakers, who that's a pretty good pickup for themselves. So now you have another 2-guard who plays pretty good defense. He's a little bit more established. He can probably help out Reggie Jackson, over there in Detroit. So I think that's a pretty good swap. And Marcus Morris adds a little bit of, a little bit of length to that team that lost Kelly Olynyk. Al Horford is your big, so now you have another player who's pretty long, and he can step out and shoot a little bit. So I think that's a trade that works out for all. And back in the West, Rajon Rondo has had a meeting with the Lakers. That's a possible good fit for the Lakers. You have another point guard who likes to pass and make other players better, similar to Lonzo Ball. That Rondo could be a pretty good backup to Ball. Be a good mentor for him. Rondo had some behavioral issues in the past, and didn't really get along with management and Doc Rivers when he was his coach. And you look at Lonzo Ball, he doesn't really have any behavioral issues himself, but he has a father, who likes to be in the thick of it and be in the mix of things. So that's a player, in Rondo who could really mentor another player like Lonzo Ball, and talk to him about his dad and how it affects the team and his playing. So I think that'd be a pretty good fit. It's also rumored that he might be signing with the Knicks as a backup to the French guard that they just drafted, Frank Ntilikina. I think that'd be another good fit. I think Rondo, anywhere he goes, could be a pretty good fit if he keeps his head on straight. I really would like to see him with the Lakers, but the report from today was that he was discussing a potential one-year deal with the New Orleans Pelicans to be Drew Holiday's backup. That's another big egoed Kentucky player on that roster with DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis. I don't really know how well that works out unless John Calipari is the head coach there. But I don't really see that happening anytime soon. So the other big news is, we talked about it last time, was Paul George being traded to OKC. And so, Chan, I want to ask you, after this season, do you think he stays in Oklahoma City?
I think we'll have to see how the season goes. I kind of wrote down here, if they get a 2 or 3 seed in the West, go pretty far, maybe beat a team or two, but eventually maybe lose to the Rockets or the Warriors, I think he will stay. I think he has no reason to jump ship to the Lakers just yet. Why? That team's still really young, still not really formed yet, while this kind of OKC team is a little bit older, and they're chomping at the bit to get these higher up teams. And I think this Russ PG-13 combo would definitely work.
1 year from now, is he on the Oklahoma City Thunder, or is he signing somewhere else?
Stays with OKC. You heard it here first.
I don't like that either. I think he came out and said that his interest in the Lakers is overstated by the media. But there were reports coming out of the Pacers locker room saying that he was hell bent on signing with the Lakers. So I especially if LeBron James is going to the Lakers, I think you're going to see the Lakers clear the cap space, to move. To bring in Paul George. So I have to disagree with you, and I think he's going to be signing with the Lakers. But currently, he arrived in Oklahoma City the other day. The fans, piled outside the airport, where he was coming out, to give him a huge welcome. It sort of starts a year-long recruiting process for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like we were talking about, to keep him there in Oklahoma City. Chan thinks he's going to stay. I don't. And KD, Kevin Durant, also came out a few days ago and was quoted as saying, OKC will surprise you. The fans are great. They were so great. Why did you leave, Kevin Durant?
Well, they're the only team that is in Oklahoma City. Like, there's no one else. The fans are always behind them. Russ has had a great year. He won MVP. PG-13 comes in as kind of like the Kevin Durant-esque player that they need again. And I think that they proved themselves and come up with a 2 or 3 seed in the West, and they show something of themselves. And this is the time to do it. And it's, like we said, it's a year-long recruiting process. If they do well, maybe some other players can hop on board this team and can maybe beat a Warriors or beat a Rockets team in a year or two.
Do you think Russell Westbrook and Paul George can work together?
That's going to be the test of this year-long recruiting process. Russ is a player that is going to take the ball more on himself. He's going to rebound it. He's going to try and assist. He plays for himself mostly, and that's where it's going to be tough because Paul George has been around a pass-first offense to him. He's the main guy. He's the one shooting it. He's the one distributing. And it'll be interesting to see how 2 powerhouse players kind of work together in the system for the first time.
So I'm going to give you a scenario. So your game 4 in the Western Conference Finals. You're home in Oklahoma City. You're playing the Golden State Warriors. There's 6 seconds left. The ball's coming in from the sideline. You take a timeout, after a made free throw or whatever, and they advance the ball up halfway. The ball's coming out of bounds, and you're down 1 point against the Golden State Warriors. You're going back to Game 5 in Golden State. This is make or break. You're either going to be 2-2 or you're going to be down 3-1. Who takes the last shot?
Paul George has got to take that shot. It's Russ's consistency is not always there. I think Paul George has to take that shot if anything. He's got to prove himself that he wants to be there, and if he does, maybe he makes it, man. Maybe he makes that shot, and they go back to Golden State with heads high, and just like maybe the Oklahoma City did 2 years ago when they were up 3-1 on Golden State. Like, that could happen again with this team, I believe.
Oh, I don't think Russ likes that. I would have to agree. I think you give it to Paul George. I think Russ has proved in the fourth quarter in the past that he is not clutch and he does not make those shots. I think he takes too many shots in the fourth quarter. But see, that's where I think the issues come in. And you have two players who really want that shot at the end of the game. And I don't think Russell Westbrook's going to like that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a sacrifice for both players. That's with any star coming to another star's team is a sacrifice, and you can see it in Golden State. I mean, it was Steph's team and Draymond's team, really, and those two kind of players ran it. But you have Kevin Durant, probably one of the top 3 players in the league, come on the team, and they won a championship pretty much outright. No one even pretty much contested them all season. So it's going to be a sacrifice for Russ and Paul George, and we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Who finishes top 4 in the West next year?
Golden State 1, Rockets 2, probably Spurs 3, and 4 is Oklahoma City. Spurs are dangerous, man.
Yeah, but I don't think they got any better. They're still trying to get rid of LaMarcus Aldridge. I kind of have to agree with you. I think the Spurs will figure it out in the regular season, but when it comes time for the postseason, I think you're going to see them kind of fade away. They're getting older. Tony Parker's like 38.
Yeah, Manu Ginobili's old. The youth of the Oklahoma City will probably take over, and that's what the Spurs need to get more youthful on that team instead of having older players.
What's your prediction for the NBA Finals next year?
It's gonna be Golden State, Cleveland again. We're gonna see it for just 4 years in a row. We'll see it.
Yeah, this will be the 4th year.
Yeah, 4 years in a row. It's gonna be like the Los Angeles Lakers, Boston Celtics, olden days, all over again. The two powerhouse in each side, and LeBron's made it the past 7 or 8 years, so he's going back again. And Golden State can't contend with they're the best team out there right now. So probably those two back again. What about you? What do you think?
I'm gonna make a bold prediction,
Ooh.
and I'm gonna say Golden State Warriors are going to finish as the 1 seed, followed by the Houston Rockets, followed by the San Antonio Spurs, followed by the Oklahoma City Thunder. So you're going to have semifinals of Oklahoma City at Golden State and San Antonio at Houston. And I'm going to say Golden State versus Houston in the conference finals. I'm going to go Houston versus Cleveland in the NBA Finals.
Is this with Melo or without Melo?
I'm going to say with Melo,
okay.
And I'm going to make an even bolder prediction.
Ooh.
And I'm going to say he's going to come off the bench.
Ooh.
I would think he's going to come off the bench. He's going to be the 6th man. And he's going to win the 6th Man of the Year award. That's another bold prediction. And I think you're going to see the Houston Rockets versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I'm going to say Houston in 7.
Ooh.
I'm feeling bold right now. I'm really feeling bold.
Folks, we'll come back to this. In a year from now, I think we'll be talking about something a little bit different than this.
We have video evidence.
We have audio evidence, John.
Audio evidence. Audio evidence. My bad. Okay, before we move to our next topic, which is the NBA Summer League and the action that happened last night, I want to pose one more question. So it also has to deal with the Summer League. So last night, the Lakers and 76ers were playing in Vegas, and none other than LeBron James was courtside watching. Which team, if he were to leave Cleveland, is he thinking about joining? The Lakers or the 76ers? Who was he scouting more last night to join next year in free agency?
he's scouting the Lakers. It's pretty evident that it's a big market out there. He probably wants to go there if other greats kind of go there and they can form another super team. But he's probably scouting Lonzo Ball. That's probably who he's scouting to see if he can lead that team with a point guard position in the next few years.
See, before last night, I would have agreed with you. But then I got to thinking, the Lakers only have Lonzo Ball. Brandon Ingram hasn't proven himself yet. Paul George is, now he's saying his interest in Los Angeles was overstated, so he might not even be going there. And I looked at that bench last night, and you have Joel Embiid. He was there watching. Ben Simmons was there watching. Markelle Fultz, granted he sprained an ankle, but he's supposed to be pretty doggone good. And Ben Simmons is supposedly the next LeBron James, is that next transcendent player in the NBA. You have $23 million committed this year for 1 year to J.J. Redick, and I believe roughly $10 million this year for Amir Johnson. So, that clears about $33 million in cap space. If the 76ers put together a pretty good run this year, I think they might give the Lakers a run for their money. Why would you want to go to the West when you can stay in the East? And, the Cavs immediately would, be at the bottom of the conference. And the 76ers would be pretty close to the top. So after I say that, do you want to rethink your prediction?
You make some good points, but I stick with my immediate assumption. The Lakers are a bigger market. And when you think about it, Los Angeles, Hollywood, big players, beach, better things happening there than Philadelphia, who might have the best cheesesteaks, but that's really all they got going for them, I think. I think the Lakers, if they bring in Alonzo Ball and they could bring in some other good – they're going to do it through free agency is what's going to happen. There's no way they're going to do it through the draft in the next couple of years because LeBron's career is kind of coming to a close through the next probably 4 or 5 years. They're going to have to make a move fast for him if they want to. And is this his last year of his contract?
He has a player option for next year, so
okay.
He can opt out.
I think the Lakers are definitely the team that he's sought after, and they're going to definitely try and make some moves in free agency. If they bring up Paul George, LeBron James, and a pretty good point guard or something there, they could make something.
See, I don't know.
You make a good point, though.
I think he takes one look at that Western Conference and says, why on earth would I want to go there? He can go to the 76ers, and, they'd definitely be a 1 or 2 seed.
Yeah.
He pretty much already has everything set for, once he retires. He could go to Milwaukee, and he can do whatever he wants when he retires. Maybe he really wants to go to Los Angeles. But I think he was looking at the Sixers last night. I really do. He was talking a little bit about Lonzo Ball, but I think deep down, he was taking a good hard look at those 76ers. But I guess we'll have to wait till next year.
We'll try and get LeBron on next week's show to see what his thoughts are.
We'll try and get a quote. But moving on to more Summer League topics, the Lakers did beat the 76ers last night. It was supposed to be a showdown between Lonzo Ball and Markelle Fultz, but Markelle Fultz with that lateral ankle sprain did not play.
More injuries for the Sixers during Summer League.
And they said it's only 1 to 2 weeks. He'll be back. He'll be fine. Lonzo Ball, after a slow first half, picked it up a lot and finished with 36 points, 8 rebounds, and 11 assists. And I see you marked down here, greatness or bust.
And let me just pose a question to you: is just the hype around Lonzo Ball with the draft, his dad hyping him up, UCLA coming out as a freshman, being a top draft pick. Do you think it is a greatness or bust career for Lonzo Ball here?
See, I don't think he's the type of player. Actually, I'm going to take that back. He is the type of player that can be great because as I was saying that, I thought to myself, Magic Johnson. Lonzo's long, so he's always going to be rebounding pretty well for a guard. And I was watching last night, and just the dimes he was dropping, they just look so natural. Some players, and I think D'Angelo Russell was one of these types of players, and why they shipped him out. Some players force the pass. It just looks so effortless for Lonzo. And I think he has the effect on players where now they want to get open to get a pass. So if you put around Lonzo a couple shooters, that's a pretty deadly team. You get Klay Thompson away from the Golden State Warriors. That weakens another Western Conference opponent. And you put a pretty good shooter around Lonzo, who's going to get him open looks. I think he's going to be great. What do you think?
Yeah, I think greatness is where we're trending here. I think him, Markelle Fultz, and Jason Tatum, and even Frank Ntilikina out of the Knicks is probably going to be the best players out of this draft. Lonzo's just the hype behind him. His dad is kind of everywhere now, and that just kind of puts him in the spotlight at all times. And I think he will be great. I think, as proven last night, if he wants to turn it up, he can. Yeah, with a slow start of, I think, 8 points a game and 11 assists a game or something like that, he really proved himself that he's a natural scorer, and he is an efficient passer and rebounder, and he can do it all for a team. And that's what this Los Angeles Lakers team's looking for, a face that they can put on the tickets and showcase and get people to go there. And I think Lonzo Ball is going to be great with that team. Might take a few years. No player now really is that great out of the draft. And I think it might take a year or two, but I think he'll be something special once we're talking in a couple of years.
Yeah, and I think the two teams that I'm really, really excited to watch are the Lakers and the Sixers. It would have been cool last night if Markelle Fultz would have played. But, when opening night comes, I'm pretty excited to watch both teams.
Now Lonzo Ball wore Nike shoes last night.
I saw that.
Instead of Big Baller Brand.
Those Kobe's looked pretty good on him. They were pretty sweet. You might want to stick with them after putting up 36, 8, and 11. His father came out and said it's not a big deal. He can wear whatever shoes he wants. If I'm Lonzo, I'm sticking with what works. And I bet Nike would pay a lot of money to get him to wear those shoes. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. In other news, Skal Labissiere leads the Kings over the Bucks. That was a player that I believe was the number one recruit in his class when he went to Kentucky, and then he just had a terrible year. Was drafted towards the end of the lottery by the Kings. I know it's only the summer league, but it seems like he might be pulling something together. We talked about earlier, Markelle Fultz sprains an ankle. He's not worried. The 76ers aren't worried. He should be ready in 1 to 2 weeks, definitely before training camp.
He is sitting out the rest of Summer League, too,
yep.
as a note to put in there.
Brandon Ingram is also done for the rest of the Summer League. He was scratched from the game. Actually, no, he finished. He played the game. When it went in overtime, they pulled him out. He had some cramping in his legs. They don't want to take any chances with last year's number 2 overall pick. So he's done for the Summer League. And number 4 overall pick with the Suns this past draft, Josh Jackson puts up 21 points for a win in Phoenix over Utah. So that's some of the high draft picks rounding out the Summer League. And now I have the pleasure of moving it over to Chandler for our Panic Button segment.
We've discussed the Panic Button before with you guys, and what the Panic Button is a team right now that hasn't really showcased himself that well.
I want to throw it in here real quick. The Panic Button last episode was Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
So we pushed the Panic Button on Derrick Rose's career, and now Chan's going to tell you who we're pushing the Panic Button on this time.
The Panic Button we're pushing this time is the Chicago Cubs, last year's World Series champions in 102, 106 years. And currently they are only 43-45 record coming into the All-Star break, and I'm officially pushing the panic button on them. I think that they will not make the playoffs this year. Jake Arrieta is not the same pitcher we saw last year. He is now human. Chris Bryant, I looked it up today, was only batting 265, 270. They did make a trade just currently at the deadline for Jose Quintana, the White Sox pitcher, who's a sought-after pitcher that they can bring in. So they are buyers at the trade deadline here, but I don't know if that makes them any better. The Jose Quintana's ERA right now is in the 4s. He's nothing special. He's just another kind of lefty pitcher that they can throw in the lineup along with John Lester. But I'm pushing the panic button on this Cubs team. I don't think they're the same team as last year. They don't have the same hitters. Kyle Schwarber, even though he didn't play much of last year, is not the same player. Their catcher, I forget.
Miguel Montero? Or,
no.
Wilson Contreras.
It was last year's. Ross.
Ross?
Yeah.
Ross?
I don't think it's Ross, but Ross.
It was Ross.
What's his first name?
I think it was John.
So he won a World Series, but we still don't know his name. So that just shows you how much we're pushing the panic button here. that this team is just not the same team as last year, and I'm pushing the button on them. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. But we're gonna keep it baseball.
David Ross. It was David Ross.
David Ross. Incoming update from John, and we're kicking it off now. Still keeping it baseball and giving you guys some updates on the new kind of All-Star format and what's been going on with that. So the previous All-Star format was that the winning team of the All-Star game would get Game 7 at their home stadium, which is a pretty good deal. You get to see two All-Star teams with the best players on it actually try in these All-Star games. But now the format is that the team with the best regular season record will have home field advantage. So I want to get your take on that. If you think that,
I mean, I think that's the correct way to do it. I don't think it's fair to have an All-Star game that's a meaningless game that's for it's supposed to be a fun and relaxing weekend. I don't think that should be. I mean, a home field advantage can decide a World Series. I don't think you should have an exhibition game decide, where Game 7 is going to be played. I understand that they're trying to get some, more interest in better effort in the All-Star game, but I don't think that's the way to do it. So I like this change, and I think you're going to see it pay off.
Yeah, and still, the winning team of the All-Star game gets $20,000, or the winning player of the All-Star team gets $20,000 each, which I know these players are making millions and millions of dollars, but it's still a little stipend that they can get if they win the game.
That's a lot of Chipotle. That's a lot of burritos.
If Chipotle wants to sponsor us, we do take sponsors, and we will put you on the podcast.
Not Qdoba, Chipotle.
And I think also, too, to add to John's point, is that players should feel fortunate to play in this All-Star game. It's America's pastime. It's the best players are getting together, and there's no need to kind of have no real need to not put these players in the All-Star game. I mean, when you're in an All-Star game, you're going to want to play your best no matter what. There's tons of fans watching. Your family's watching. Your kids are watching. Sometimes they're at the game with you. So when these players are there, they should feel fortunate enough to be at the games.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it should be. It's treated by players as more of a relaxing weekend. You get like 12 days off during a regular season, and you have the chance to have like 5 relaxing days in a row. But I still like to see a good hard fought game every now and then, and ending 2-1 in a walk off fashion. I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's still good baseball. It's still what the fans want to see. And it's just they're taking away this kind of previous rule of whoever wins this to get home field advantage in Game 7, and that's a pretty big deal. But the real kind of talk of the whole All-Star weekend was Aaron Judge's home run derby champ. So he comes in at 6'7", 282. He's almost a tight end that has switched over to baseball, and it's kind of what's happened is he's bringing a revival back to baseball. I mean, with kind of concussions being more prominent in football, and just not how many you can't field a full team of basketball. I mean, you have 12 to 13 guys on an NBA roster. I mean, 1 in a million kids is going to be on an NBA roster, more than that. So it's kind of nice to bring a revival back to baseball and see kind of a player that could play some other sports come to play baseball.
I read something today.
You read?
Yeah, I did. I read something today, and that is that Aaron Judge defies the laws of NASA. It is reported that when the Marlins built their stadium, they had to use NASA physics formulas to figure out how they should build the roof so that no ball would ever hit the roof when it was hit by a batter. And it had to be, a certain height over second base where the apex of the flight of a home run ball would be. It had to be a certain height over the outfield wall. So they used these NASA formulas to build this roof so that no player could ever hit the roof when they hit the ball. And if they did hit the roof and it bounced back in play, even if it was going to be a home run, they had to. It would be considered a fair ball. So no player has ever hit the roof at Marlins Park until Aaron Judge, he hit 4 home runs greater than 500 feet, and 2 of them hit the roof at Marlins Park. Two balls hit the roof at Marlins Park, which was supposedly impossible to hit by, as that was coming from NASA. NASA, the people that go to space. 2 balls hit the roof. What do you think about that?
It just shows you what sheer power he has. I mean, he's an NFL body playing baseball, and you don't see it too often. Granted that he's 25, I believe, and he spent the past couple years in the minors. I mean, he only hit a couple home runs in college and batted average here in his minor league days. But for some reason, this Aaron Judge is the talk of the town in baseball, and he's the next face of baseball right now. And it's great to see just a revival come back to baseball.
So you're a big Aaron Judge fan?
I am a fan right now. I like baseball getting more talk on ESPN. It's normally NBA and NFL on there. And the only reason that, or the real reason that baseball is kind of getting this revival is that I think it's America's pastime, but millennials and younger generation people, they want to watch a quick game. They want a fast-paced game as hockey or soccer or basketball where the ball's moving at all times and the pace of the games is quicker, and that's where baseball is kind of at fault. That they have a slow game. It could take 3.5, sometimes 4 hours for a baseball game, and younger generation people do not want to sit down for that long to watch a game. So they just need to bring up the pace of the game is the best way to kind of combat that.
So we're making a lot of predictions today. So I want to ask Chan, who do you think's playing in the World Series in October? While he's thinking, I'll say the Nationals out of the NL, and I got to think about the AL for a second. I'm gonna go between either the Astros or the Indians, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be the Cleveland Indians again. And I think you're gonna have Cleveland versus Washington, and I think it's gonna be Cleveland's year. I think they have home field advantage now because the AL did win 2-1 in Robinson Cano walk-off home run in the 10th. I think you're going to see Cleveland in 6.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
NL wise, I think the Dodgers are a great team right now in the NL West. Clayton Kershaw's on top of his game. That whole team's on top of his game. And I think the Houston Astros are a young, fun team to watch, and they bat the best in baseball, and they put the ball in play. They don't strike out much. And this is just a young team that's great to watch, and I don't think anyone can compete with them right now. So, Dodgers, Astros taking it in 6 also.
I guess we'll have to see again. Making a lot of predictions, and have to wait and see. Before we move on, last show we did our AFC playoff predictions. We're going to do our NFC playoff predictions here shortly. But there is one thing that I forgot to note in the NBA, and some people might have overlooked it. But the amount of timeouts that a team gets was reduced from 9 to 7. And the amount of timeouts that you can call under 2 minutes, it was reduced from 3 to 2. And all timeouts now, instead of being 90 or 90 or 25, I think it was, they're all now 60-second timeouts.
Just picking up the pace of the game as before and making that last 2 minutes of the game not as dreadful when teams are calling timeouts left and right just to see what the other team's going to do, rest their players, make sure the ball is in a certain spot, make sure they have the play run. Just kind of pick up the pace of the game there.
Exactly, but I'm going to propose that they change it even further. See, you have the NFL who has 3 timeouts a half. The NHL has 1 timeout a game.
MLB's no timeouts.
MLB has no timeouts, and MLS has no timeouts. They don't even stop the clock. So why do you still give 7 timeouts a half? Why not move it down to 3 and make players figure it out on the go instead of giving 7 timeouts? That's such a huge number of timeouts to be able to call during a half. Why not make it 3?
Yeah. It should be shorter than 7 timeouts a game. We've all watched a great game, and it comes down to the last 2 minutes, and whoop, timeout, whoop, timeout, whoop, timeout, and fans get mad, players get mad. You want to be on the floor more, and really it's to set the ball in the right position sometimes, or to stop the other team and make them shoot free throws, and even maybe have a guy at the free throw line call a timeout so we can miss 1 or 2. It's like icing them. They definitely need to bring it down to maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5, just to kind of make the pace of the game quicker and make sure that these last few minutes of the game aren't as dreadful. And maybe they should even do a new rule where if you don't call timeouts at the end of the game, they carry over somehow, or each player gets money or something. Some crazy new rule that they could implement.
Chan's making wacky things up here. I'd really like to see 3. I think 4 would be acceptable. I think 5 is still too high. That's a lot of timeouts. And I think when you watch an NFL game, there's nothing better than a beautifully run 2-minute drill with Aaron Rodgers, and he has no timeouts. Like, it's so just pretty to watch how he just drives up and down the field. So why not? You have 3 timeouts a half. You get 1 timeout under 2 minutes, and you make the players figure it out themselves. You have an NBA championship game. It's games, it could be game 6 or 7, and the Cavs only have 1 timeout, so LeBron James has got to figure it out himself, rather than calling timeout here, timeout there. It just gets boring. No one wants to see timeouts left and right, as Chan said. So the average NBA fan would overlook something like that, but us crazies don't really overlook that kind of stuff.
It's big news.
It is big news. I got excited when I saw timeouts reduced, and then it was only reduced 2. So I was a little bummed out. But I think if the play doesn't pick up as much as they hope, that you'll probably see him reduced even more. And call me crazy, but I want to see him down to 3.5 and only be able to call 1 under 2 minutes.
We'll be writing a note to Adam Silver here soon about our thoughts on it.
Yeah. We'll get a petition going. All you listeners can sign for us. All right, so we're going to move on to NFC playoff predictions. And we did the AFC last episode. You can check that out. It's towards the end. We really went through every team in every division. And this time we're really just going to go through who we think is going to come out of each division. Chan's going to go first with his predictions.
Coming out of the NFC North first is Green Bay Packers. That team has been pretty good every year. With Aaron Rodgers leading the helm, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the game. But reports are always kind of saying that why can't Green Bay not win a Super Bowl? Why can't they go farther? And I think it's because of Aaron Rodgers' ego. He's kind of a California kid that comes into this small town place, and he thinks he runs a place, and he thinks he's the head honcho there. And a lot of players like playing with him because he's such a great arm and such a great leader. But sometimes that ego can kind of pick up in the locker room and not translate on the field well. But they have a great wide receiver core in Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, better running backs too that they've just picked up. But their biggest downfall in the past few years has been not being too aggressive in free agency. They haven't really picked anyone up on defense. They kind of pick up some smaller players here and there that they can find, but there's no big moves like the Patriots do every year where they find some great kind of no-name guy, and that's what kind of the Packers' downfall has always been.
So I'll give my NFC North prediction, and it's the same thing as Chandler. I'm not going to go on and repeat what he said. I'm just going to say Aaron Rodgers.
Coming out of the NFC East, Dallas Cowboys. I think this is one of the toughest divisions too. You have teams that are all really great. You have the Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Redskins. Kind of a great four team there, and I think this is definitely the toughest division that you're going to see out there in the NFC. Zeke, coming out of Ohio State, had a year under his belt, finished top 3 in fantasy-wise. Great player, kind of led that team with that offensive line too, and their defense has been stout too, and defense wins you championships. But what I think is going to be interesting to see this year is teams have probably figured out Dak Prescott, I believe. He kind of took the league by storm last year, and I think this year teams are going to have figured him out, and they're going to kind of look into what his quarterback style is and how he plays. And I think if they figure him out, the Cowboys might not do as well as everyone thinks.
I'm going to have to agree with Chan. I think when I look at the Dallas Cowboys, I see them coming out of the NFC East. You basically have the best offensive line in football. So Elliott's going to be able to run all over the place. He's effective as a pass catcher too. I think Dak's a pretty special quarterback. Don't really know how he slipped as far as he did in the draft. I think you're going to see him really build on his first year. The defense is always getting better, but the big key on the defense is if Sean Lee can stay healthy. Last year he did for the first time in a long time. And when he does, he's definitely one of the best middle linebackers in the NFL. So again, I think you're going to see the Dallas Cowboys come out of the East.
Coming out of the NFC West, we had the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson's probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league too. When you think of mobility, arm, he brings it all. He takes care of the ball. I mean, he kind of leads that team also, and he's coming really back stronger and stronger and kind of healthier than ever before. He kind of went on a new weight training program that required him to eat about 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, but he actually lost weight too, which is great.
He's also got a smoking hot wife. So
thanks to Future on that one. Russell Wilson is just one of the premier quarterbacks in the league, and if he can stay healthy, he'll lead that team. I'm back to the NFC West champs, and the great defense that always is the Legion of Boom. And when you think best team that's going to make it every year, you look at Seattle. They're just always in the mix of things. They're always probably win 9-10 games a season, and that can definitely get them top of the division.
I'm gonna have to agree with Chandler again. Not much diversity between our picks here. I see the Seattle Seahawks. I think the biggest thing is the division they play in. The 49ers are bringing up the rear. The Rams are bringing up the rear, and the Cardinals, who really aren't necessarily bringing up the rear, but Carson Palmer is not the same player he was once. But going off that, you bring in Eddie Lacy, who could probably revive his career like Marshawn Lynch did. You have Thomas Rawls, and the Legion of Boom. So I see Seattle coming out of the West.
In the NFC South, which I call the shakiest division every year, you can be a 1 seed in 1 year and the next year falling off your last place. But I definitely see the Atlanta Falcons coming back again. They're bringing the same team back, same running back, same quarterback. Julio Jones is back, kind of. So even though that defense might not be as good, that offense is going to be high powered as always. They're going to have a great running back core and Devontae Freeman and Tevon Coleman. Matt Ryan's going to be slinging the ball all over the place again. They have great receivers, and I don't see why they shouldn't take first place in that division.
This is where our picks sort of start to differ. I'm going to make my last bold prediction of the podcast, and I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming out of the South. And I think you're going to see Jameis Winston throw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. He's got Mike Evans, who was a top 3 receiver in the NFL last year. They add Deshaun Jackson. And you have Doug Martin coming back. He had a few issues last year. But I think he's going to be coming back strong. And I think you have a force to be reckoned with in the NFC.
My wild card one is definitely going to be the Carolina Panthers. They kind of made that unbelievable trek with Cam, and they had great receivers, running backs. Everyone was playing on point, and they were the team to beat. And then you saw last year that they weren't the same team again. They couldn't get it together, and Cam wasn't as good, and he was getting sacked pretty often. The defense wasn't there. Luke Kuechly got hurt. But I think with the additions of Christian McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel, they'll kind of bring some speed and some new kind of more high-powered offense to this Carolina Panthers team. And I'm calling that Cam's going to be the comeback player of the year. He had a pretty poor year last year, but just like he did in Auburn and just like he did 2 seasons ago, he has proven that he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league with mobility-wise, with his running ability. And he's just a strong leader in that offense. And I think he'll kind of be a comeback player this year.
I disagree. I think, Chan had the Atlanta Falcons winning the division in the South. I did not, but I believe they're going to be our wild card 1 team. You have Matt Ryan, Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman, and Vic Beasley, who could be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I think you're going to see a team that is going to come off a Super Bowl loss, maybe have a little bit of a hangover. But I think you'll see them, fit into that wild card 1 spot pretty nicely with the better record than wild card 2.
And then wild card 2 position, rounding out the NFC, is going to be, I think, the New York Giants. Bringing in Brandon Marshall was a huge upside for that team. It went 11-5 last year without him, and bringing on another great receiver is just going to add to that, I think. And they just finds way to win. I mean, Eli Manning has 2 Super Bowls under his wing, and I mean he's doing something right if he's winning that many games as 2 Super Bowls. So they find a way to win, and that defense is always pretty stout. And I just don't, when I look at the NFC, I just don't see any other team that has maybe the high-powered offense like they do that can kind of beat any team. And with that tough division too, I think that they'll definitely play the Cowboys twice. They'll definitely kind of play the harder teams most of the time, and when they do, they kind of prepares you for the playoffs. So once I think they get to the playoffs, they'll be a team to watch.
My wild card 2 is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz is coming into his second year. I think if he's going to build off his first year, he's going to play pretty well. You bring in Alshon Jeffrey, who's a really big red zone target, about 6'5". He can go up and get the ball. You pair him with Jordan Matthews, and in the backfield you have LeGarrette Blount, who's a new addition, and Ryan Matthews. And you have a defense that's always improving. So I think you're going to see a team that's really going to take flight, no pun intended, in the Philadelphia Eagles. So, again, I have the Green Bay Packers, Dallas Cowboys, Seattle Seahawks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then Atlanta Falcons and Philadelphia Eagles as my 2 wildcard teams. And to remind everyone of what chance predictions were, the Green Bay Packers, Dallas Cowboys, Seattle Seahawks, Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers, and New York Giants. So unless Chan has any final words, this is going to wrap up our podcast. Chan, do you have any parting words for the people?
No final words, and NBA free agency is pretty much ending right probably about now. Final couple days here. Most of the big names have been taken off the board. Just like Carmelo Anthony left, really that's happening. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on Paul George and how him and Russ stay together. The NBA Summer League, I think, is in playoffs right now, so we have a few more games there, and we'll be kind of bringing you our take on who probably wins, what scores happen, maybe some more injuries that happen, as I like to say. MLB, the games resume tomorrow. I guess big news, Starling Marte will return after his PED suspension. Be interesting to see how he fits into the Buccos lineup again. And then playoffs, or I think training camp starts in about 2 weeks now for NFL teams. So once training camp starts up, it starts to get into fantasy football season. And I always like fantasy football, one of my favorite times of year. So I think we'll be giving you some fantasy tips and tricks that I like to do during my draft and stuff like that if you guys are interested.
There's your words of wisdom from Chandler McKinney. Chan and I were discussing it, and I think we're going to continue with a Tuesday, Thursday podcast routine. We ordered some new equipment, so hopefully for Tuesday's show, we'll be rocking some fancy gear. But I like the Thursday podcast. We're going to close up shop here. We're going to head downstairs and whip up a nice meal, and then you wake up in the morning and it's Friday. You can't really beat that. It's nice outside, and it's going to be Friday. So that wraps up this Thursday's show. As always, if you enjoy us, please give us that subscription on YouTube. And, we look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Have a good one, guys.